Welcome to this audio narrative on time management. To begin with, let us consider this question. Everyone on this planet has only 24 hours a day, and yet some people seem to be a lot more effective than others. They seem to be able to get a lot more done than other people are able to. Why this difference? What makes some people more efficient in time management and others not so much? A thought to reflect on is that time management is not so much about how much time you have, because everybody does have the same amount of time, but it is a question of how much you manage to get done in the time you have. And this is different for everyone, and there are tools and techniques which we can learn which can make us better on this particular dimension. Let us see what they are. Requires some basic parameters to be in place. One is that each individual needs to know what are the tasks, what are the activities that they need to do, some understanding of prioritization, and it's not just enough to have a to-do list or to have a priority well understood, but it is important to execute in a disciplined manner. To start with, perhaps, if you're not already doing it, you should start with a to-do list, which you start with every day, or better still, do it the earlier night so that you know exactly what you need to do the next day when you wake up. I would like to refer to this particular framework, which was proposed by Dr. Stephen Covey in his books, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It is a very interesting framework, which is a 2 by 2 matrix with urgency on one on the x-axis and importance on the y-axis. So you get four quadrants. One where you're looking at it's urgent and important in quadrant 2, urgent and unimportant in quadrant 3, not urgent and unimportant in quadrant 4, and important and not urgent in Q1. Let us see what kind of tasks fall under each of these buckets. Most of this are self-explanatory. Let me just take a couple of ones, right? Urgent and important. These are things which need to get done yesterday. It might be a crisis, some emergency, somebody is just taken ill, seriously ill, and you need to admit to the hospital. We all know that you need to clear everything on your plate and get going with this. Or it might be missed deadlines, or exams are coming up and we're not prepared enough, so we need to cram a lot on the day before the exam. So these are things, over which we have very little control. Then there are things like, which are unimportant but urgent. You know, today's society, we face a lot of interrupts, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Messenger, whether it's phone calls, people dropping in, social media, Facebook, you name it, you have it. And much of this falls under this category. So, what happens if you don't pick a phone call? And what happens if you don't answer WhatsApp until the evening is over, or for that matter, even an email? But many of us choose to go in for these interrupts, accept these interrupts, and get diverted from whatever we're doing. Then on Q4, you have unimportant, not urgent. It's pretty obvious. A lot of unnecessary activities here, but we do seem to do a lot of these as well, and it's something to reflect upon. And the most important quadrant here is Q1, which is important but not urgent. Now, understand this well. The most important quadrant is that which is important but not urgent. These are typically the kind of life building or career building work, okay, that happens. It could be strategy, it could be job, it could be goal setting, it could be those path breaking projects which you are looking to undertake, so that you can create a significant differentiator and differentiation for the organization, for your team, for yourself, or for the industry itself, like 5 to 10 years down the line, pursuing a path which nobody's thought about. This is by no means urgent, but this is the kind of activity which really value adds to society. Let's go one step further. Let's give these quadrants names. So Q1 is typically what you call the focus quadrant. This is the kind of activities on which you need to focus, and then wherever possible, you need to prioritize these activities over everything else. Q2, it's unfortunate. Some of them just land up on your plate, like a crisis or an emergency or an accident, right? There's nothing you can do about it, and you need to take time off and clear the deck to handle this. But many of the times, you get activities on this particular quadrant because you've not done your homework, you've not been disciplined, not prepared for your exams, you've not done your work well in time, like you goofed off, and hence you're late, hence you precipitated a crisis. So the best you can do is to manage, and unfortunately there's nothing you can do, but you need to do it at this time. But if you bring about a change in your lifestyle and start doing things ahead of time, you will ensure that much lesser comes up in the urgent category than otherwise. And that is really the way to move forward. Not for today, you can't do much about this quadrant today. But if you do bring about a change in lifestyle, perhaps in 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, you'll see that not as many activities come into this bucket as you do as it does today. The third one is in terms of the unimportant but urgent, right? These are relatively trivial tasks, though it's not earth shattering. Nothing earth shattering is going to happen if you don't do this. But we seem to be compelled to participate in these kinds of activities. Typical things is emails. Many of us these days check emails right through the day and leave alone WhatsApp and Facebook and whatnot. So, what happens if you don't check? Hey, if it's urgent, somebody's going to call you. It's all right. Okay, and where possible, it is best to delegate these activities to somebody who works under you so that you will have time for the more important activities, right? And that is a good style of management. The last one is we all waste a lot of time. Like, we do things much more than do such activities, which are time wasting activities, which are time fillers, much more than what we need to, right? And if you really got to do more or get more throughput in a day, you definitely need to look at ways by which you can reduce the time wasting activities every hour, every day, every moment. If you there are some broad guidelines in terms of where what can be spent. Now, I've said more than 65% on Q1. Well, that might be a little theoretical. I recall a story where Abdul Kalam talks about in his autobiography. He says that one of the one of the habits he developed is that the very first hour in office in the morning, and he goes to office at 7:30 when everybody comes in at 9 o'clock. The first 60 to 90 minutes, Dr. Abdul Kalam says that he found a way by which he can dedicate his first hour or 90 minutes to those tasks, which are way out in the future, which are strategic, which requires fresh thinking, and he has the most energy in the morning, and he's able to dedicate that time, and that is how Dr. Abdul Kalam became Dr. Abdul Kalam, what he went on to become, because he took time from every single day to do those absolutely important tasks, but which are not urgent at all. And then remarks something very important. At 9 o'clock, when people come in, after his first hour or 90 minutes, once he steps into his daily activities, they would completely consume him, and he would have almost no time at all, okay, for anything else, right? So how can you do those important but not urgent activities if you don't get it done first thing in the morning? I think he's really given us a beautiful way by which we can also try and practice this. You should look at it, you can play it. It is a slightly longish video. It plays for about 7 or 8 minutes, but it's absolutely worth every minute of it if you do have the time. It talks about prioritization and really how we should prioritize the much more important tasks than the ones which are not important at all. It's beautiful. So in terms of the lower quadrants, Q3 and Q4, how do we deal with it, right? One, we said, is delegate where possible. And interrupts, today the phone rings, the WhatsApp message, the notifications are everywhere. Whether it's email, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Facebook, whether it is IM, or whether somebody just knocking on your door. And they say whether you have a minute, but then it takes forever. One of the most important things that we've got to learn, okay, in corporate life is the ability to learn to say no. Stand up. You actually decided what your activities for the day are. You defined a priority. You classified them by the quadrants, at least mentally. and you know what needs to get done. Why do you get distracted, and why should we allow ourselves to get distracted by absolutely unplanned for perhaps unimportant activities? So please learn to step up and say no. Be very polite when you're doing this, but you should do this for them. And if it does, okay, you can spend a couple of minutes in this. It'll be a good activity to do. But what we're here pointing out here is that it takes about 21 days to form a habit, right? And this is kind of well researched information. So if you want to make one single small change in your lifestyle, start today, start now, and resolve that you will do this continuously for 3 weeks. And what researchers have found out medically is that, once you do an activity for 21 days without a break, you will not be able to stop it, right? And that change becomes permanent. It takes roots. So if you've got to become more efficient, if you've got to become more effective, you've got to bring about real changes in our lifestyle, and that change starts now. So ask yourself these questions. Am I being productive or just being active? Today, a lot of people seem to confuse activity with productivity. I might be running around like headless chicken all day, but doesn't mean I'm getting anything done. In fact, I recall a quip by one of my friends saying, "Hey, you know what? I was so busy today that nothing got done." You know, It gets you to laugh, but then it's a very real fact today. Okay, and sometimes we just seem to be inventing work activities to do so that we just fill up time and shying away from work that is really important. You got to dig down and see why you're shying away from work. Is it an inability to take responsibility? Is it the inability to face people and really bite the bullet? You got to ask yourself and get on with it if you really mean to get somewhere. My perspective is that there's really nothing like multitasking, right? What we effectively do when we multitask, or like when we have five balls up in the air, is we effectively pause whatever activity we're doing and start a new activity. And then we pause that and then start a third one and a fourth one and so on, right? How often do you ask yourself this question? How often do you find 28 windows open at the end of the day, some mails half written, some Excel half analyzed, and so on and so forth, right? And many times you just shut the computer and go home, and 27 or 25 of those tasks just don't get done at all, right? Is it really worth it? The other way to look is that other way to look at it is that, right, every time you pause something, when you come back to that particular problem, it takes time to get tuned to the context, right? It's like a plane, right? I mean, it takes so much time for it to take off and to land, but after 20 minutes after takeoff and 20 minutes after it lands, before it lands, that's the peak performance, right? I mean, it cruises at 800 kilometers an hour. But you take that first few minutes, right? It's hardly moving, okay, relatively speaking. So that's the way we work as well, right? So one suggestion is that pick one task, give it all your attention, stop those distractions, and just do it and do it extremely well. Complete the task, put it away, take the next one. Just try this and see how far you can go. There's one last mention. I mentioned a couple of words seemingly interchangeably, right? One is efficiency, the other one is effectiveness. What really is the difference between the two? Now, efficiency is doing things right, whereas effectiveness is doing the right things. I'll repeat it. Efficiency is doing things right, whereas effectiveness is doing the right things. I'll give you an example, a very simple one, right? Efficiency is like, when you're driving and you're driving quite fast, safe, and really like, moving, okay, putting a lot of distance, okay, between where really moving on the road, right? That is highly efficient. And if you're actually consuming very less petrol, that's even better. You're far, far more efficient, right? But effectiveness asks this question, hey, is your direction right? Are you going in the opposite direction, right? So effectiveness means to get you to the destination at in the shortest possible time. Efficiency is like how quickly you get there, or how what is the least amount of resources you need to spend in order to get there. So efficiency is good, but effectiveness is heartfulness, right? So the first is we develop focus through meditation. So whatever task we pick up, we have the ability to focus and get it done and get it done extremely well. The second thing is through the process of cleaning, we reduce mental chatter. And when we reduce mental chatter, we are able to focus much better on the task at hand. And much more importantly, our minds don't branch off and go into 20 different directions. There is a greater possibility that we can stay in the moment. And when we stay in the moment, all our attention, all our focus, all our energies are now devoted to the task at hand. That's the best possible chance that you have of getting that job done extremely well. The last is with continued practice of heartfulness, it's been our experience that it brings about inner change. It brings about inner transformation. It really helps us move towards inner excellence in every single thing that we do in life. Time management, that could be one of it as well. Thank you very much and have a